Young and the Restless spoilers Tuesday, full December 16th. The Abbott Communications launch party is shaping up to be the kind of glossy, high-profile Genoa City event that looks like pure celebration from the outside and feels like a pressure chamber from the inside. On paper, it should be a triumph. The Abbotts unveiling something bold and modern, a moment designed to announce stability, ambition, and a forward-facing identity. In reality, the night is becoming a convergence point where multiple storylines collide at once: corporate warfare, romantic jealousy, hidden agendas, and a looming murder plot that turns champagne clinks into something far more ominous. The most unsettling part is that everyone involved seems to sense the air changing, even if they cannot yet name exactly why. That is what makes this launch party so dangerous. It isn't merely an event where drama happens. It is an event designed to amplify drama, to put the right people in the same room at the same time, and to make it impossible for consequences to remain private. It begins with Jack Abbott and Diane Jenkins receiving shocking news. The kind of news that does not simply derail a pleasant evening, but rips the floor out from under whatever confidence they were trying to project. In Genoa City, shocking news at a public event is never random. It arrives with timing that feels engineered, as if someone wanted the blow to land where it would be most humiliating, most destabilizing, and most difficult to contain. Yet there is another possibility hanging in the air, one that gives the moment a different kind of tension. Perhaps the shock is not only an attack against Jack and Diane, but part of a trap they have laid for Victor Newman. The idea fits a familiar rhythm in this town: Jack anticipating Victor's next move, building a countermove inside the spectacle of a launch party, and waiting for Victor to overcome it. But if it truly is a trap, it is also a gamble, because Victor is not a man who is allowed to fail, not by his own standards and certainly not in front of an audience. Victor's pride is a force of nature. It doesn't simply dislike losing. It treats losing as an existential insult that must be corrected with escalation. That means if Jack and Diane are springing something on him, they aren't just risking a clever reversal, they're risking a retaliation that could scorch everyone in the blast radius. The pressure intensifies because Victor has been telegraphing this moment for weeks, promising that the launch party would become a turning point, a stage for him to execute his plan against Jabbo with maximum impact. If Victor is initiating his attack on schedule, then everything about the night becomes weaponized. The timing of announcements, the presence of reporters, the whispers moving between guests, the way a single headline can spread through phones faster than anyone can deny it. Jack and Diane's reaction matters. But what may matter even more is how the people closest to Victor respond once the reality of his actions is visible in public rather than hidden behind closed doors. That shift in focus from the immediate victims to the internal Newman fault line changes the meaning of the event. It becomes less about whether Victor can strike Jabbo and more about whether Victor can still control the loyalty of the people who are starting to see what his obsession is costing them. Adam Newman sits at the center of that tension like a man being pulled in opposite directions. He has already shown signs of trying to help Jack, whether out of conscience, strategy, or a more complicated need to prove he is not merely Victor's instrument. But the launch party threatens to expose how fragile Adam's independence really is. If Victor is executing the plan through Newman Media, if the narrative attack on Jabbo is rolling out precisely as designed, then Adam's earlier gestures toward Jack may suddenly look like either a sincere attempt to pull back from the cliff or a hollow performance meant to ease guilt without changing anything. The night forces a choice. Will Adam actually stand against Victor in a way that costs him something? Or will he continue to operate inside the familiar pattern of doing just enough to quiet his conscience while ultimately serving his father's agenda? In Genoa City, people don't judge you by what you intended. They judge you by what you allowed to happen when you had the power to stop it. The launch party is exactly the kind of stage where Adam's in-between positioning becomes unbearable. Because neutrality is a myth when families are at war and reputations are being publicly shredded. Nikki Newman's role is even more emotionally charged because her anger at Victor isn't merely a disagreement about business tactics, it's a deeply personal wound created by deception. Nikki is furious because Victor lied to her, and lies in their marriage have always carried a particular kind of toxicity. Nikki knows Victor's nature. She knows his grudges and his appetite for dominance. But being lied to forces her into a humiliating position. It reminds her that Victor's need to control doesn't stop at his enemies. It extends into his own home. It also raises a question Nikki can no longer avoid. When Victor is in war mode, is there anyone he won't manipulate? At the launch party, Nikki's anger has nowhere to hide. Public spaces have a way of clarifying private truths because you suddenly see how the person you love behaves when they think the world is watching and when they want the world to fear them. If Nikki is already furious, the spectacle of Victor's attack on Jebo could push her from anger into decision. The real suspense surrounding Nikki isn't whether she disapproves as she does, but whether she will actually do something with that disapproval. Genoa City history is full of moments where Victor smooths over damage with money, favors, and carefully placed fixes, and Nikki has seen those cycles repeat. That's why the question is so sharp. Will Nikki and Adam step in as real counterweights, or will they fall back into the pattern where Victor creates disaster and then pays to make it disappear, leaving everyone else to swallow their pain and accept the new status quo? As if corporate warfare and family fractures aren't enough, Phyllis Summers is poised to bring her own brand of chaos into the room, and her chaos is always personal before it becomes strategic. The prospect of vicious Phyllis returning to form is less a surprise than a warning, because Phyllis tends to become most dangerous when she feels replaced, disregarded, or humiliated. Seeing Kane Ashby with Lily Winters threatens to hit all three of those triggers at once. In Phyllis's mind, it isn't just that Kane is moving forward, it's that he is doing so publicly, confidently, and with the kind of elegant ease that suggests he is choosing Lily not out of convenience, but out of genuine desire. That kind of image can be intolerable to someone like Phyllis, because it creates a narrative where she is not the center, not the irresistible force, not the one controlling the emotional weather in the room. And when Phyllis feels she is losing the narrative, she often tries to seize it back with whatever tool is closest: an impulsive confrontation, a manipulation, a provocation, a move designed to shift the spotlight and turn someone else's joy into someone else's embarrassment. The launch party becomes the perfect environment for that kind of impulsive decision because it is crowded enough to make humiliation sting, glamorous enough to make jealousy burn hotter, and public enough to ensure that a single bad choice becomes a story that lasts. That is why the night is poised to feel as if it has been launched to the moon, as you put it, because the stakes are not confined to one corner of the ballroom. Every storyline is feeding another. Victor's planned attack on Jabo is the corporate spine of the chaos, but it's the emotional nerves that make the chaos explosive. Adam caught between conscience and obedience. Nikki caught between love and betrayal. Jack and Diane bracing for a shock that could be either a disaster or a trap. And Phyllis walking into the room with jealousy simmering and self-control already cracking at the edges. The entire atmosphere becomes ripe for something to snap. And in Genoa City, what snaps at a party rarely stays at a party. It becomes a fallout that spreads. Then there is the darkest thread running under the glitter. Matt Clark's return being tied to a murder plot, with Annie Stewart ordered to eliminate Sienna Bacall. That detail changes the emotional texture of the launch party even if it isn't explicitly revealed there, because it confirms that the city's danger is no longer metaphorical. This is not just people killing each other in business. This is someone potentially being targeted for actual death. When a storyline like that is active, every other conflict becomes more ominous because you start to wonder which dramatic distraction is being used to cover a darker move. A crowded launch party, media chaos, people arguing, security focused on managing Vipsto's conditions can become the perfect cover for something terrible happening elsewhere. Or even for a message being delivered in a way that no one expects until it's too late. Nat's plans for Genoa City aren't about a single enemy. They're about reshaping the city through fear, making everyone feel that no amount of money, power, or prestige can protect them if he decides to strike. So the Abbott Communications launch party becomes more than a celebration. It becomes a crucible. If Jack and Diane receive shocking news, it may be the moment their entire strategy shifts from defense to retaliation. If Victor launches his attack, he may expose fractures within his own family that he cannot buy his way out of this time. If Adam and Nikki truly mean what they've been feeling, if their anger and conscience are real, this is the moment they will be forced to prove it with action rather than words. And if Phyllis lets jealousy drive her into something reckless, she could turn an already volatile night into a public disaster that changes relationships permanently. With a murder plot creeping in the background, the tension isn't just about who will be embarrassed or who will lose face. It's about whether the city is sliding into a phase where power games no longer have boundaries, and where the people who think they're attending a glamorous party are actually standing on the edge of something far more dangerous than they understand. The Young and the Restless is setting up the kind of two-pronged pressure cooker it does Stone storyline running on corporate warfare and public humiliation. The other running on raw fear and the possibility of lethal violence, and the scariest part is how easily the two can collide when everyone's distracted by the same glittering stage. The new framework coming into focus makes Sienna Bacall less like a bystander and more like a deliberate piece on the board. She is bait, positioned to draw Matt Clark out into the open long enough for Nick Newman to finally catch him. And Noah Newman is the human lock on that plan because he refuses to leave her side. Noah's devotion isn't just romance or loyalty, it's strategic commitment. If he walks away, the entire setup collapses, because Sienna stops being a controlled lure and becomes an unpredictable target drifting through Genoa City. That's why the current details Sienna staying in Noah's room at the CAC feels both logical and terrifying. It's a contained location, a place Noah can monitor, a place that looks safe on the surface because it's public, prestigious, and supposedly secure. But Y&R has always loved exposing the lie inside safe, and a hotel suite at the athletic club is exactly the kind of setting that can become a trap disguised as protection. If Matt believes Sienna is within reach and believes she can be handled quickly, he doesn't need to reveal himself. He can outsource the dirty work, keep his hands clean, and still inflict maximum fear. So it's not surprising if in his personality and his pattern that Matt would walk straight into the bait by doing the one thing he always does when he senses control slipping. He escalates. He sends any steward to eliminate the problem, not to negotiate, not to intimidate, but to erase. From Matt's perspective, ordering someone else to strike is not a risk, it's a flex. It tells the Newmans he can reach their protected spaces. It tells Noah that devotion can be punished, and it dares Nick to stop him without becoming something darker than he wants to admit. The fact that Sienna is easy to attack in Noah's GCAC room isn't about her weakness, it's about how a predator sees the world. Doors, timing, blind spots, and the predictable routines of people who think they're being careful. Noah's refusal to abandon her therefore becomes both the most admirable and the most dangerous element of this entire setup, because it means if Annie comes, she isn't just walking into a room with Sienna. She's walking into a room with Noah, and that raises the stakes from a hit to a collision that could shatter multiple lives at once. Meanwhile, Nick's role in the trap carries its own quiet dread. He can set a net, he can anticipate Matt's moves, he can coordinate the timing, but he cannot control how much violence erupts the moment Matt feels cornered. And he cannot control what it does to the people Nick is trying to protect. That's the cruel tension Y&R is building. The trap is necessary, but the trap is also an invitation for Matt to prove exactly how far he is willing to go. And when you're dealing with a man who believes he will defeat the powerful Newman family, far is never far enough. It's only whatever line he hasn't crossed yet. That's why many viewers are already sensing what the genre rhythm often delivers. Matt's downfall likely won't be quiet, and he likely won't exit without dragging someone else toward the edge with him. The show tends to treat villains like Matt as storm systems. When they dissipate, they leave wreckage. The question isn't merely whether he's stopped. The question is what price is paid at the moment he's stopped, and whether that price lands on the person who was used as bait. The person who refused to leave the bait alone, or the person who laid the trap in the first place. It also raises the ugliest possibility of all. What if Matt succeeds in harming Sienna before anyone can intervene? Why Andar can make a single attempt feel like a season-long trauma, because even a failed hit leaves scars physical, emotional, relationally if it happens in a place that was supposed to be protected, especially if Noah feels responsible for positioning her there. And especially if Nick has to live with the reality that the trap only worked after someone he cared about was almost destroyed. That's the kind of moral math the show loves to force on its heroes. You can catch the monster, but do you catch him before he proves his point? Or do you catch him after he's already rewritten your life? And that's only one half of the ticking clock, because at the same time the city is bracing for a possible attempted killing. Victor Newman's broader agenda is still poised to detonate in the public arena. The Abbott Communications launch party has been framed for weeks as a pivot point. And if Victor's promised attack on Jabot is meant to begin there through Newman Media amplifying Jack Abbott's own decision to shut Jabot down, then the night becomes the perfect cover for chaos. A crowded event, a flood of attention, people watching phones and headlines, reputations shifting in real time. It's an ideal environment for a corporate strike that masquerades as news. Victor cannot afford to fail, not in his own mind and not in front of an audience, because his power is built on certainty and the illusion that he always knew the outcome before anyone else realized there was a game. Yet Victor's greatest vulnerability right now isn't Jack's countermoves or Diane's resilience. It's the possibility that the people closest to Victor finally refuse to be extensions of him. Adam Newman's position has become precarious because he has shown signs of helping Jack. And Nikki Newman's anger has become more than disapproval. It's a reaction to betrayal, to being lied to realizing Victor's control impulse doesn't stop at enemies. If Victor launches the attack as planned, the most interesting question may not be how furious will Jack and Diane be, but what will Adam and Nikki do when Victor crosses the line again in full view of everyone? Will Adam finally choose a tangible act of resistance, or will he continue the pattern of half-measures, quick guilt, small gestures, and then compliance when the pressure peaks? Will Nikki's fury become action, or will it be absorbed into yet another cycle where Victor buys silence, smooths fallout, and keeps moving as if nothing truly touched him? Add to that the volatile emotional wildcard of Phyllis Summers, whose jealousy over seeing Kane Ashby with Lily Winters threatens to turn the launch party into a personal minefield. Phyllis in that mode doesn't just feel hurt. She feels challenged, and when she feels challenged, she tends to create a scene that forces the room to revolve around her pain. The show has been pointing toward vicious Phyllis resurfacing. And jealousy is one of the fastest accelerants for her worst impulse, especially in a glamorous public setting where Lily's proximity to Kane reads like a declaration. So the launch party is poised to become a stack of explosives: Victor's corporate strike, Nikki's moral revolt, Adam's divided loyalty, Jack and Diane receiving shocking news, Billy Abbott and Sally Spectra scrambling to manage reputational fallout, and Phyllis standing on the edge of doing something she should not do because the image of Kane and Lily feels like humiliation she cannot tolerate. That's why the looming questions feel so sharp, and why they matter together rather than separately. If Matt's assassination attempt against Sienna is set in motion through Annie, does it happen during the same window as the Abbott Communications launch when attention is scattered, security is distracted, and the city's emotional focus is split between public spectacle and private dread? If so, the danger isn't only that Sienna could be hurt. It's that everyone's capacity to respond in time is compromised by the very chaos Victor is manufacturing. And if Victor's attack on Jabot truly has to happen because he promised it and because it echoes multiple arcs, does the show use that corporate explosion as the noise that covers a more personal act of violence? Or does it reverse the expectation, forcing Victor's grand plan to compete with a life or death crisis that makes his obsession look petty to the people he's trying to impress? This is why the endgame feels so compelling. The trap with Sienna is supposed to catch Matt, but it could also expose what the Newmans are willing to become when cornered. The launch party is supposed to be Victor's victory lap, But it could also become the moment Nikki and Adam prove whether they are truly willing to stand against him. And Phyllis's jealousy threatens to spray gasoline across the entire room at the exact moment a match is already falling. So here are the questions the next beats are forcing onto the table, whether the characters want them or not. Does Matt manage to get to Sienna throw a knee before Nick, and Noah can stop it? Turning bait into trauma. Does Noah's refusal to leave Sienna become the thing that saves her, or the thing that places him directly in the blast? And does Victor's attack on Jabo still unfold as planned, or does the evening's chaos emotional and violent warp the outcome in ways even Victor cannot fully control? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Who do you think Matt tries to drag down with him when the trap closes? And do you believe this launch party ends as a corporate catastrophe, a personal humiliation, or something far darker?